This is the most powerful handheld gaming PC that we've been able to test on the channel so far. It's the new One X Player OneXfly F1 Pro, and it's powered by the Ryzen AI 9 HX 370. In my previous video, we took a look at this thing running Windows. That's what it comes with out of the box, and it was able to handle everything that I threw at it. If you want to check out that video with this thing running Windows, I'll leave a link in the description. But I was really interested to install Linux on this machine and see how it would perform with a more Steam Deck-like operating system. So for this, I've installed Bazzite OS, and out of the box with the OneXfly F1 Pro, everything's been working here. And I was actually pretty surprised to see this because this is one of the newer handhelds on the market with that Zen 5 APU and that 890M GPU. Got full TDP control, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, speakers. The 144Hz OLED display here is working just fine. And we've got RGB control through Bazzite. This new Ryzen HX 370 handheld really does put down some amazing performance even at lower TDPs. You can go from 4 watts up to 30 with this, and even at a 15 watt TDP, you could see some really great performance with AAA games at a lower resolution. Even something like Cyberpunk 2077 at that ultra preset is really playable. Now, albeit I did take FSR to balanced instead of quality, but you can see we're not quite at 60, but I'm only at an 18 watt TDP. I'm not using frame gen, and if you wanted to use frame gen, we could really skyrocket that frame rate with these same settings here, but the game itself does look absolutely amazing on this 1080p OLED display at ultra settings. 18 watt TDP, we're seeing anywhere from 35 up to around 41 FPS with this game. But again, we're only at an 18 watt TDP, and if you wanted to take this up, you definitely could. So we'll just take it up as far as we can, here to 30 watts, no extra boost there. And now we're getting really close to running this at a steady 60 ultra settings 1080. This chip does handle these games really well, and to tell you the truth, between 20 up to 30, there's not much of a difference here with Cyberpunk. But what I've been doing is taking the preset to high, FSR to balanced. So we'll just take this up to high, balanced, back in the game, and now we're over that 60 mark. So yeah, this thing is putting down some really great performance even without using frame gen here. And there are people out there that just kind of don't like frame gen for some odd reason, even on lower end systems, which it does make a lot of sense to run frame gen on a low end system like this, just to get the maximum frame rate out of what we've got here, because we're not working with a dedicated GPU. With frame gen enabled, 91 FPS average, high 1080 with Cyberpunk 2077 on this device. I've got a few more things I want to show you, and then I want to get into some more game testing, but what I'm going to do now is just plug this into my game capture so we can get a closer look at this unit. So yeah, I was actually pretty surprised that this just worked out of the box. I mean, we've got that brand new unit here, the F1 Pro with the HX 370 and Bazzite. I mean, I didn't have to do anything. I figured I'd have to mess around with something. Rotate screens, maybe try to get the RGB working. But just taking Bazzite, flashing it to the internal SSD here, everything seems to be functioning properly. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Right now, I've got this plugged into my game capture, so it'll do up to 120, 1440 just for recording. But remember, this has that 144Hz OLED display. We've also got full TDP control, and all of this is handled by Handheld Daemon. So from, I believe, 4 watts, 4 watts up to 30, and we can enable a little bit of a TDP boost. But what I've been doing is setting this at around 18 with no extra boost. It's there if you needed it. We can fully adjust the fan curve, but I've left it with that stock setting. Manual CPU settings, we can change the EPP, disable CPU boost. And again, we do have that RGB control. And right here, we've got a lot of presets. These are just kind of the presets from One X Player. Brightness, low, medium, high. And I figured we'd be able to adjust this across the board, but we've just got 3 settings. Not too bad. For the built-in controller here, I've got it set up as an Xbox. And yeah, so far, so good. So I'll show you real quick. If we head into our settings, we go to System, move on down just a bit. We've got that AMD Ryzen AI 9 HX 370 with that 890M GPU. 12 cores, 24 threads, and this unit here is a 32 gig version. So we've got 32 gigs of LPDDR5 running at 7500 megahertz. And I've got 8 gigs dedicated to VRAM. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting setup. And again, I've been running most of this stuff at 18 watts, but some of this stuff actually runs really decently at 15. And like God of War with some frame gen, low settings, 1080, 15 watts, around 75 to 80 FPS on average. But another thing we have going here with the HX 370 is efficiency. Jumping into Hades 2, I've taken this down to 60 Hz. Now the screen on this is a 144 OLED. The panel itself will draw more than a 60 Hz IPS. So what I've done here is lock this game at 60 FPS. Still really great experience on this OLED. High settings, 1080p. And if you take a look at our total power draw right there from our performance menu, 15.2 watts, and this is everything included on this device. Even the RGB, which I totally forgot to disable, might give us a little more, might not, but 15.2 watts with an easier to run 2D game like this at 60 Hz can net us over 3 hours of battery life. And I think that's one of the main drawbacks to the OneXfly F1 Pro, just battery size in general, but they wanted to keep that same form factor and throw in an 80 watt in here or a 99 watt hour battery, which is in some handhelds in the future that we're going to be seeing would be really nice, but they did stick with that 48.5 watt hour battery. Next up, we've got God of War Ragnarok at a 15 watt TDP. And with the way I've got it set up right now, 1080 low with frame gen on, the CPU is only doing 14 watts right now. And this game does run amazingly on the HX 370 with frame gen enabled. At an 18 watt TDP, we can actually get a jump of about 22 FPS, but keeping it low there at a 15 watt TDP, we're seeing an average of 76 FPS with this game. The Witcher 3 was one I definitely wanted to test here because I have run into some issues with this game on different APUs. Now it looks like the HX 370 is doing a great job with this one, but I figured we'd get more out of it given the age of the game. 1080 medium settings with some FSR, we're seeing an average of around 81 FPS. And I'm not complaining here, I mean that's more than enough for a handheld, but I just figured given the age and the power of this 890i GPU, we'd see a little more out of this. Ratchet Clank Rift Apart, and I'll tell you, if you want to run this game at a lower wattage on your handheld, frame gen is going to be where it's at. Otherwise, you will have to take that wattage up. So right now, I'm at 1080 medium with frame gen enabled. We're seeing averages in the low 100s. So without it, at this 18 watt TDP, we're getting an average of around 56. I mean, it's right there on the edge of being steady at 60. But frame gen does double the frame rate of this game, and it's so worth it with this one on a handheld. And finally, Black Myth Wukong. 1080 FSR set at 50%. That's the way it's going to have to be with this one, along with FSR frame gen enabled from the game itself. This was definitely one of my favorite games of the year, and I actually wasn't going to buy this, but my son talked me into it, and then I started seeing everybody going crazy about it. This game is so worth it. If you haven't played it, you are missing out. So with Bazzite OS installed on the OneXfly F1 Pro, it kind of takes it to another level. Of course, Windows, you can still game and you're going to be able to play more games over there. But I love the fact that you boot this thing up just like the Steam Deck. You don't have to worry about the desktop if you don't want to, and you can really get in there and just play your games. It really does turn this into a handheld gaming console rather than a handheld gaming PC. And given the fact that we've got the more powerful HX 370, remember those cores are based on Zen 5, and when it comes to this iGPU, it's got 16 compute units instead of 12 like we see in the ROG Ally X with the 780M. This is the 890M, plus instead of RDNA 3, it's RDNA 3.5. And more manufacturers will be coming to the market with chips like this in their handhelds coming up soon, so keep an eye out. But if you're interested in doing a little more research on Bazzite for your handheld right now, or if you want to check out the OneXfly F1 Pro, I'll leave links in the description. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. Had a lot of people asking about Linux on this machine, so I figured I'd go ahead and make a quick video. If you've got any other questions, let me know in the comments. And like always, thanks for watching.